Are you a green card holder planning to travel outside the United States? You need to hear this urgent alert right now. The Department of Homeland Security has reportedly begun blocking certain green card holders from re entering the country. And if you're not aware of the new enforcement policies, your next international trip could end with you being denied entry at the airport and losing your permanent resident status forever. Welcome to U.S. MoveLine, your most trusted source for breaking immigration news, visa updates, and everything you need to know about living and working in the United States. I'm Norbert Gabriel, and I'm here to give you the complete breakdown of this developing situation involving DHS and green card holders. This is extremely serious, and whether you're a recent green card holder or you've had your permanent residency for years, you need to understand what's happening right now, why DHS is taking these actions, and most importantly, what you must do immediately to protect your status. Stay with me until the very end because I'm going to give you a specific checklist of actions you should take before your next international trip to avoid becoming one of the thousands of green card holders who are currently stranded outside the United States or facing removal proceedings. Let me start by giving you the critical facts about what's actually happening at U.S. ports of entry right now. Over the past several weeks, there has been a significant increase in the number of green card holders who are being stopped, questioned extensively, and in some cases, completely denied re-entry when they attempt to return to the United States from international travel. This is not a rumor or speculation. Immigration attorneys across the country are reporting dozens of cases where their clients, who are lawful permanent residents, have been detained at airports for hours, subjected to intensive secondary inspections, and ultimately told they have abandoned their permanent resident status. The Department of Homeland Security, working through customs and border protection officers at airports and land borders, has dramatically increased enforcement of a law that's actually been on the books for decades but was rarely strictly enforced until now. This law states that a green card holder who remains outside the United States for more than 1 year without obtaining a re-entry permit, or who takes actions that demonstrate an intention to abandon permanent residency, can lose their status. What's changed is not the law itself, but the aggressive way it's now being enforced and interpreted. Let's talk about the specific situations that are triggering these denials and what CBP officers are looking for when you arrive at the airport. The first and most obvious red flag is the length of time you've been outside the United States. If you've been gone for more than 6 months, you should expect enhanced scrutiny. If you've been gone for close to a year or more than a year, you are at extremely high risk of being questioned about whether you've abandoned your residency. CBP officers have access to all of your travel records, and they know exactly when you left the country and how long you've been gone. But here's what many green card holders don't realize. Even if you've been outside the U.S. for less than 6 months, you can still face problems if CBP believes you're using your green card primarily to maintain status while actually living somewhere else. They're looking at patterns of behavior. If you travel in and out of the U.S. frequently, spending a few weeks here and then several months abroad, then coming back for another few weeks, that pattern raises suspicions. CBP officers are trained to identify what they call perpetual tourists, people who have green cards but don't actually maintain a permanent home in the United States. During secondary inspection, which is where these issues typically come to light, CBP officers will ask you very specific questions designed to determine whether you've truly maintained U.S. residency. They will ask where you live in the United States. They want an actual address, and they may verify this address through databases. If you say you live with a friend or family member, but you don't receive mail there, don't have your name on any utility bills, and haven't filed taxes from that address, that's a major problem. They will ask about your employment. Do you work in the United States? If you work abroad, why? How long have you been working outside the U.S.? If you're retired, where do you spend most of your time? They will ask about your family ties. Where does your spouse live? Where do your children go to school? If your immediate family lives abroad and you only come to the US alone for short visits, that strongly suggests you've abandoned residency. They will ask about your financial ties to the United States. Do you have bank accounts here? Do you own property? Do you pay state and federal taxes? Have you filed your tax returns as a U.S. resident? This last point is absolutely critical and catches many people off guard. As a green card holder, you are required by law to file U.S. income taxes on your worldwide income every single year, regardless of where you're living or working. If you've been living abroad and haven't filed U.S. tax returns, you have not only potentially abandoned your green card, you've also violated federal tax law. CBP officers now routinely ask to see proof of recent tax filings. If you can't produce evidence that you filed your taxes, particularly if you've been outside the US for an extended period, that's often the end of the conversation. Your green card will be taken, and you'll be given the option to sign a form stating you're voluntarily abandoning your permanent resident status, or you'll be placed in removal proceedings. Let me explain what happens during the actual denial process, because this is terrifying for people who experience it. When CBP determines that you may have abandoned your residency, you're taken to a secondary inspection area. Your passport and green card are taken from you. You're not under arrest, but you're also not free to leave. You may wait for several hours while officers review your records and consult with supervisors. Eventually, an officer will call you for an interview. This interview is not casual conversation. Everything you say is being documented and can be used against you in immigration proceedings. The officer will present you with their findings. They'll explain why they believe you've abandoned your permanent resident status. You'll be given an opportunity to respond and provide evidence to the contrary. But here's the problem. Most people don't travel with the kind of documentation you would need to prove ongoing U.S. residency. You would need things like recent utility bills in your name, lease agreements, employment verification letters, tax returns, bank statements showing regular activity in the U.S., evidence of property ownership, insurance policies, and so on. Very few people carry these documents when they travel. If the officer concludes that you have indeed abandoned your residency, you have two options. Option 1, you can sign a form called an I-407, Statement of Abandonment of Lawful Permanent Resident Status. By signing this, you're voluntarily giving up your green card. You'll be allowed to enter the U.S. as a visitor if you're from a visa waiver country or if you have a valid visitor visa, but your permanent resident status is gone immediately. Many people sign this form because they're tired, confused, scared, and they just want to enter the country to deal with whatever situation brought them there, like a family emergency. This is usually a terrible mistake because once you sign that form, it's extremely difficult to undo. Option 2, you can refuse to sign the I-407 and request a hearing before an immigration judge. If you choose this option, you will not be admitted to the United States that day. Your green card will be taken, you'll be given documentation, and you'll have to return to wherever you came from. Later, you'll receive a notice to appear for a removal hearing. At that hearing, which could be many months away, you'll have the opportunity to present your case to an immigration judge and argue that you did not abandon your residency. You can have an attorney represent you. However, you'll be stuck outside the U.S. until that hearing, which creates enormous hardship for most people. Now, let's talk about some of the specific circumstances that are leading to these denials. One major category is green card holders who obtain their permanent residency through employment, but then immediately or shortly after moved back to their home country. Immigration officers are particularly suspicious of people who go through the entire green card process, get approved, enter the U.S. briefly to activate the card, and then leave and don't return for months or years. This pattern suggests the person never had a genuine intention to live permanently in the United States. Another vulnerable group is people who got their green cards through marriage to a U.S. citizen but are now divorced or separated and living outside the U.S. If you obtained your green card based on marriage and that marriage has ended, you need to be extra careful about maintaining clear ties to the United States. CBP officers will definitely ask about your marital status, and if you're divorced and living abroad, they may question whether you have any remaining basis for permanent residency. Elderly green card holders who return to their home countries to be cared for by family are also being affected. This is particularly heartbreaking because many of these individuals are in their 70s, 80s, or 90s. They came to the US, got green cards through their children who are US citizens, but then found it difficult to adjust to life in America due to language barriers, cultural differences, or health issues. They went back home intending to return eventually, but months turned into years. Now, when they try to come back, they're being told they've abandoned their status. Let me address the re-entry permit issue because this is something every green card holder who plans significant international travel needs to understand. A re-entry permit is an official document issued by USCIS that allows you to remain outside the United States for up to 2 years without abandoning your permanent resident status. If you know in advance that you're going to be outside the US for an extended period, applying for a re-entry permit before you leave is absolutely critical. However, here's the catch. You must apply for the re-entry permit while you're physically in the United States, and you must complete the biometrics appointment in the US before you leave. The application process takes several months, and many people don't plan ahead. They leave the US thinking they'll only be gone a few weeks. Then circumstances change, and suddenly they've been gone for 8 or 9 months. At that point, it's too late to apply for a re-entry permit. Another important limitation is that a re-entry permit doesn't solve all problems. Even with a valid re-entry permit, if you fail to file U.S. taxes, don't maintain a U.S. address, and have no real ties to America, CBP can still question whether you've abandoned residency. So, what should you do right now if you're a green card holder, especially if you've been spending significant time outside the United States? First, and most urgently, if you're currently outside the US and you've been gone for more than 6 months, you need to return immediately. The longer you stay away, the harder it becomes to argue that you haven't abandoned residency. If you've been gone for close to a year, this is a genuine emergency. Book a flight and get back as soon as possible. Second, before you return, gather documentation that proves your ties to the United States. Get copies of your recent tax returns. If you haven't filed taxes, you need to file them immediately, even if they're late. The IRS allows you to file previous year's returns, and while you may face penalties for late filing, having filed returns is infinitely better than having no returns at all when you're standing in front of a CBP officer. Get documentation of your U.S. residence. This could be a lease agreement, a mortgage statement, utility bills, bank statements, anything that shows you maintain a home in the United States. Third, prepare a clear, honest explanation for why you were outside the U.S. for an extended period. If you were caring for a sick relative, bring medical documentation. If you were dealing with a legal matter in another country, bring documentation of that. CBP officers are human beings, and while they have to enforce the law, they also have some discretion. A compelling, well-documented explanation can make the difference between being admitted and being denied. Fourth, if you're outside the U.S. and you've been gone for more than a year, or if your situation is particularly complicated, consult with an immigration attorney before you attempt to return. A good attorney can review your specific circumstances, assess your risks, and advise you on the best approach. In some cases, it might make sense to voluntarily apply for a returning resident visa, which is called an SB1 visa, at a U.S. consulate abroad. Let me also address what you should do if you're a green card holder who hasn't had these problems yet but wants to avoid them in the future. The single most important thing is to maintain clear, strong ties to the United States. This means actually living in the U.S. most of the time. Your home should be in the United States. This is where you receive mail, where your bank accounts are, where you file taxes from. If you need to travel internationally for extended periods, do so strategically. Try not to be outside the US for more than a few months at a time. File your taxes every single year without fail. This cannot be emphasized enough. Your tax filing history is the single strongest evidence of whether you're maintaining US residency. Keep excellent records of all your time in the United States. Some people keep a spreadsheet tracking every entry and exit with dates and purpose of travel. This might seem excessive, but if you're ever questioned, having precise records is invaluable. So, to summarize the key action steps, if you're a green card holder, live primarily in the United States, maintain a genuine home here, file your taxes every single year, keep your green card renewed and current. If you need to travel extensively, get a re-entry permit before you go. Document all of your U.S. ties, including residence, employment, family, and financial connections. Never stay outside the U.S. for more than 6 months without very good reason and documentation. And if you can't maintain these requirements, consider whether you should voluntarily surrender your green card rather than risk having it taken away. This situation is serious. It's happening right now, and it's affecting real people every single day. The Department of Homeland Security is not backing down on these enforcement priorities. If anything, enforcement is likely to become even stricter in the coming months. You cannot afford to be complacent about this. Your permanent resident status is a privilege, not a right, and it comes with responsibilities and requirements that you must meet. Thank you so much for watching. US Move Line. If this video helped you understand the serious situation facing green card holders right now, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We bring you breaking immigration news, visa updates, policy changes, and practical advice every single week. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a critical update that could affect your immigration status. Share this video with every green card holder you know, because many people are completely unaware of these risks until it's too late. Leave a comment below if you have questions or if you've personally experienced issues when re-entering the US as a green card holder. I read every comment, and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Remember, knowledge is power when it comes to protecting your immigration status. Stay informed, stay compliant, and protect your right to live in the United States. This is US Move Line. And I'll see you in the next video. Safe travels and stay vigilant.